Okay, everybody. Thanks so much for coming on. I don't know what just happened, but it was black for a second, and now it looks like I'm here. So thanks for hopping on here. A lot of people have been asking me to hop on YouTube, so I thought, why not? And this is the perfect case to talk about. So thanks for coming on to listen to me talk about it. I've been covering the Pike County Massacre in Pike County, Ohio, the Roden family murders since they happened. It was April 22nd of 2016. And I remember, just so people who aren't familiar with me covering the case, what happened was I walked into the newsroom that day. I was working the night shift back then, and I was working a day shift that Friday morning, which was like a special treat. Every once in a while, I'd be asked to work a 10 to 7 shift after working 2:30 to 11:30 the night before. And so I was all gung ho and geared up to get off early on a Friday night. And so, I walk into the newsroom and I didn't even set my things on my desk. And it was before 10 because I always showed up earlier than 10. And the assistant news director said, uh, don't even put your stuff down. You're going to Pike County. And I was like, where's Pike County? I never even heard of it. And it was one county east of our viewing area. So that is how I began covering this case. And we were told basically that it was a family of 7 who had been murdered. That was the tip that we got, that it was possibly a murder-suicide, that the teenage boy was dead, or maybe out on the loose. Actually, Chris Roden Jr. may have actually killed his parents and his other family members. They couldn't find him, but we were told that there were 7 people dead. So the theory was that it was a murder-suicide. That turned out to not be true. Let me just say hi to everybody. First of all, I used to do, just so you all know, I used to do Facebook Lives all the time when I worked in local news. So we were always asked to do those, and I always loved doing them. So I'd hop on Facebook Live all the time. So YouTube Lives, I didn't do a lot, but I would do them sometimes. But I just wanted to say hi to Wanda, Allison, Hash Brown. I feel like I've seen Hash Brown in some other chats before, Mo, and the docket, of course, saying hello to the docket. So everybody can hear me okay and everything. I'm just checking to make sure, since when I clicked go live, everything was black there for a second, which I didn't really understand since everything was connected. I'm assuming you guys would let me know if you couldn't hear me. So yeah, so everybody's giving me a thumbs up. Okay, so that's good. So anyway, this case, if you've been following it, is insane. The whole fact that this family, and I can say this because Jake and Angela have admitted to it, right? They've admitted that they came up with this big plot to kill the Rodens because they wanted to have custody of Sophia. And Angela said it was all because they were afraid Sophia, and I probably shouldn't even be using her name, so I apologize for that. I should probably just say the little girl, that the daughter that Jake shared with Hannah Mae Roden, they had this fear that she might be sexually abused. So they didn't even know if she was being sexually abused. They just had this fear that maybe she could be. And to me, I think that was just an excuse that they used to justify wanting to have custody of the little girl all to themselves. So this little girl now, at this point in time, she probably is about 11 years old now. Don't quote me on my math there. Hash Brown's asking, Anjanette, was the cartel theory a thing or no? So yes, in the very beginning, in the very, very beginning, and keep in mind, Pike County has a population of 27,000 people or so. In the very, very beginning, there were all kinds of crazy theories. Could it have been something having to do with cockfights, because the Rodens had cockfighting roosters on their property? They had been in some scuffles and some fights with teenage boys and things like that. Could it have been something with having to do with that? There was all this talk about the cartel. because there was a marijuana grow operation found on Chris Roden Sr.'s property. So people were thinking to themselves, is this a cartel hit? And that was actually something that was seriously explored because, you know, the cartels, they don't want people stepping on their turf. But I mean, the cartels, I had people in the DEA telling me straight up from the very beginning, the cartels are not going to come up here from Mexico and shoot a bunch of people in Southeast Ohio in the head, execution style, in the middle of the night, and leave babies and dogs alive. So from the very beginning, they were saying they felt whoever did this was familiar with the property because the dogs were left outside of Chris Roden Sr.'s house. So that was a thing, but they actually did seriously investigate that. And I had some contacts that were telling me shortly after this happened that the cartel thing was not, you know, legit. That it had nothing to do with a cartel. There was no way. They didn't know what it was, but it was not a cartel hit. So, I mean, Chris Roden wasn't moving enough marijuana to justify something like that. So, but anyway, there have been some crazy things that have happened recently. We're now in Billy Wagner's trial, which has been delayed a couple of times. It's now scheduled for January of 2025. And the judge in this case, there's a new judge. His name's Jonathan Hine. He retired from the Dark County Common Pleas Court a while back. And he is taking no guff from anybody involved in this case. I'll tell you that right now. He's not taking any crap, for lack of a better term, from anybody. And he wants this case done and over with. The other judge that was on the case retired. He was having some health issues. So he stepped down off of the case. And this Judge Hine flagged and signaled that he was going to grant a change of venue motion, which he did. The state was not happy about that. And I think that trying to seat a jury in Pike County this soon after George's trial, George IV, where he was found guilty, would be hard. So here's what happened recently with this. The judge in this case, bring back Judge Deering. I'm not even sure that bring back Judge Deering is a good idea, to be honest with you. I'm not sure that's a good idea at all. But what happened recently was the judge had said many months ago, Judge Hine, that he wanted this whole thing about the death penalty because Jake's plea deal basically said, I will plead guilty and testify against all of my family members if you take the death penalty off the table for all of my family members, because he's scared to death of a death penalty and he wanted to spare the lives of all of his family members. So they agreed to this, okay? And this has never been done before. This is not a type of plea agreement that anybody has ever agreed to before. So in order to do that, it's a weird thing because then they end up seating a death penalty jury, which adds a whole nother layer of complexity to everything. But the judge said many months ago, I don't want to, we don't need to do this. Let's work on something to remove these death penalty specifications. And so we don't have to do this. And let's just work out an agreement. You guys work something out so we don't have to do this. And then, figure this out so we don't have to do it. Well, the other day, this came up in court. It wasn't like the other day, it was more than a week ago. And they were like, there's been no agreement reached. Okay. So the judge did not like that. So I'm going to play a little bit of this hearing. The judge is kind of taking matters into his own hands. There's been no agreement reached between the defense and the state about removing the death penalty specifications from the case before the trial. And so the judge was asking questions about that. So let me share my screen so you can watch a little bit of this.
There were copious amounts of expected motions that the defense filed in response to the specification for death. And I think the last representation from one of the defense lawyers was most of those are being withdrawn.
POV. I thought this was the only thing harming my liver.
A lot of people think that alcohol is the only thing.
Because they were filed in anticipation of being thorough. So you want to talk in that regard, Mr. Hayes, whatever, Mr. Collins? I don't care.
I think hypothetically, Your Honor, they will be withdrawn once we get to a magic point of not needing them, so to speak. I don't mean magic in a bad way. Yeah, and I believe that will hopefully happen before the December status conference or motion hearing. So I think that is that's our intention, Your Honor. It's our intention to withdraw them unless something comes in silence.
Does that sound right, Mr. Neffner?
Does sound right, Your Honor.
Very close, Your Honor.
From my first event, I've heard the discussion, the negotiations about writing an appropriate agreement with regard to whatever it is you're trying to agree upon. So how are we working on your agreement?
Your Honor, as this court knows, or I think we brought to the attention, and I don't think anyone would dispute this, the agreement that we're trying to fashion, there's not really a template for it. And, we're trying to accomplish certain legal
Sorry, I muted. Sorry. Okay, you heard her say, sorry about that. You heard her say there's no template for this, and she's right, because this has never been done before, where a co-defendant says, I'll testify against all my other family members, my co-defendants, because I love them, they're my family, and I don't want them to get the death penalty, but we did this, and we're all going to prison for life, so spare their lives, but I want to save their lives. So this has never been done before. Plus, they want to not, because of the way this is structured, if Jake doesn't fulfill his end of the bargain and testify to her liking, if he gets up there and doesn't do what exactly she wants him to do, or she doesn't testify to her satisfaction and hold up his end of the bargain, then they still move forward with the death penalty, right? So they have to bank on, before removing the death penalty eligibility from the case and not seating that type of jury before the trial, they have to bank on Jake actually going through and holding up and going through with his end of the bargain, and that he's not going to get up there and be like, oh yeah, my dad didn't do it. It was all me. And then his dad walks or whatever. So that's what it means, testifying to the satisfaction of the state. So they're trying to hammer out some agreement where they do that. They take the death penalty off the table for Billy before the trial. They haven't been able to get there. So let me play the rest of this. I muted my mic before because my dog was barking.
Realities, and it's just a matter of wordsmithing it so that both parties are satisfied that if an event happens, we're in the position that we need to be in. And so it's, we're working on it. We've done back and forth. But we're not there yet.
Conceptually, we've agreed.
Conceptually, we agree.
So that's tactfully vague, but I won't let it go. So now tell me what you're trying to do with more specificity, because I want a more specific record.
I believe as a group, we're trying to achieve the concept of nobody is accused or can be found of ineffective assistance of counsel, and no one can be accused of prosecutorial misconduct, so to speak. Is that a fair way of putting it? And that it's a fair resolution, that all parties, maybe you don't agree with 100%, but they agreed to 100% when it's signed and everything, but they agreed to work towards that measure.
What's the trigger for the lawyers to have personal responsibility? Like, what are you dealing with?
It's an unorthodox situation, and again, it doesn't happen very often, and so there's not a lot of guidance for us on case law or things of that nature that will, give us, hey, definitely. So we kept our client up to date on everything. He's in agreement, and so once I believe the government is satisfied with some specifics, then we'll have everything in agreement.
Is this in the realm of removal of the death penalty specification?
Yes, sir.
Does it go beyond that? Mr. Wagner, from the start, this case has been really important because of a specification calling for the death penalty. You've heard that before, right?
Yeah, Your Honor, I've heard it.
Okay.
Yes, I have.
Yeah. Then there was a series of negotiations, and there's witnesses who have testified based upon representations that the death penalty is to be removed, right?
They've mentioned that.
Okay, so I think that's a foregone conclusion based upon the representations from the lawyers.
Maybe.
So I'm taking this where I want to take it, but is it a foregone conclusion that the death penalty specification is being withdrawn?
I believe so. I don't want to, commit perjury or anything, but that is the goal. If we can get the language that, so let me give you this scenario. In George Wagner's case, his son's case, we did it as a death penalty case because the agreement with Jake Wagner is if you testify truthfully, then we dismiss the death spec, not only for you, but for the individual that you are testifying in their trial.
Similar representation in Angela Wagner's?
No.
So
No, we did not reach that agreement with her.
okay.
So it's only Jake. So, in that,
I'm gonna pause this for a second and interject. So this is all very strange because I just think that the state could just drop the death specs. I mean, I don't know what wordsmithing needs to go on. There apparently is something the state filed after this hearing where they're opposing the dismissal of the death specs because it's all part of this like kind of messy thing, this agreement they reached with Jake because they keep the death penalty specifications on there in case he doesn't hold up his end of the bargain and doesn't testify to their satisfaction, which he did at George's trial. And then they dropped the death penalty specs after they had already gone through all the trouble of seating this death penalty jury, which takes a whole nother layer of questioning. It's a total pain and it took forever out there, which added a lot more cost and stuff. They could just drop the specs. And, I would like to ask Angie Canepa, like, just drop the spec. Like, why aren't you just dropping the specs? Just drop the specs because Jake is going to get up there and do what he did the last time, more than likely. So she's saying they need to wordsmith this and whatever, but they filed something after this hearing where they're saying Billy's saying, I won't sign anything. I don't know why they need some big, huge agreement. Personally, the state feels like they have Jake and Angela ready to go and in the bag. It's like with any witness who's basically a snitch, they can change their mind at any point in time. So let's continue. And, I was kind of chuckling at Billy because this is just how Billy is. I mean, he's just like, oh, I don't think so. Like whatever.
scenario, the state and the state alone decides whether or not they're satisfied that Jake Wagner appeared and testified truthfully, right? Because we don't dismiss the death sentence unless we believe that to be true. In this situation, we're trying to fashion it so that we dismiss it ahead of time, again, for the mutual benefit of the parties. The unorthodox that he's talking about is they have to waive double jeopardy and speedy trial as to the death specs. We have to dismiss it ahead of time. And we have to have enough assurances that if things go sideways, which I don't think any of us actually anticipates happening, but if that event were to occur, the state has to feel confident that it would have that same ability to make that decision, that whether or not Wagner has fulfilled his end of the bargain, right? So, as Mr. Collins said, I'm unaware of anybody else doing this on the planet. Now, maybe they have, I just don't know that. But,
And I think she's right. Nobody else has done this. It's messy, it's weird, and I've never heard of a deal like this ever. But you don't really ever have a big conspiracy with 4 different family members. So, this is all with Jake finding God and being afraid of the death penalty and wanting to save the rest of his family members. He also asked to see his family, they all get together one more time before they all go to prison for the rest of their lives.
that's the challenge. And we're both sides are trying earnestly to fashion an agreement that accomplishes, confidence in the agreement that we get, that it's accomplishing what they need to do, it protects their clients' rights, and, the state protects its rights as well.
Anything else? Thank you. Anything,
Yes.
Mr. Collins, Mr. Hayes on that?
I think that's a fair assessment. We appreciate you asking about the concept.
Everybody in the room needs to understand, I'm not going to be on the tip of the spear. Like, my patience has been necessary and appropriate, and I'm not going to micromanage the lawyers. But what you're telling me is no different than what I heard in September, and I believe everything you just said. I have full confidence you can get there. When you don't get there, and I become the tip of the spear, the first person that says something about needing more time to prepare a case that's not going to have more time to be prepared puts everybody in the room in a really bad place.
So keep in mind, trial with jury selection is scheduled to begin in January. They got to get this thing going, right? Like, this has been going on for months. I remember, in the summer, I thought they had already removed the death specs. And then I talked to somebody and they were like, no, they didn't. They're still working on an agreement. And I was like, really? I thought they were moving, like that was done. Like, I thought it was done. No, it wasn't. Okay, continue. This gets heated.
Because everything that hasn't been done, based upon the representations and assurances that we would get there, then becomes a powder burn on everybody's face at Mr. Wagner's expense, which we're not going to do. Now, you're working, I appreciate this. I know I've got good lawyers on both sides of this case. It's a pleasure, but I'm not going to let this case become me on the tip of the spear. The court system isn't designed to take responsibility when negotiations appropriately break down. We are months and months and months behind where you would be on a case that goes to trial with a death spec.
I understand everything you're saying, Judge, and so that there's complete disclosure.
Okay, so he's saying he's laying down the law. He's getting the hammer down. So he'll have to lay the hammer down. So listen to this next part from Mark Collins. And Mark Collins is a really good lawyer. He practices out of Columbus. All the defendants in this case had really, really good lawyers.
Prior time on the prior judge, we were told, we were guided to stop mitigation because of cost issues. So that would be the only issue. Potentially, if the agreement doesn't work out, however, I can make adjustments on that as well. With our experts, so to speak, and things of that nature. So.
Yeah, I'll circle back to that, I hope. What do you have on your list? Anything on your list, Mr. Hayes?
You touched them
Mr.
all. for us.
Collins?
You touched them all for us, Your Honor.
You have a list going, Ms. Canepa?
No, Your Honor, I mean, yeah, we have another hearing set December 16th currently. And obviously, 100% respect the court's, I guess what I'm saying is, I think at some point, we're going to have to issue summons for jurors in this case. And so I don't know if December 16th is early enough. I mean, if that gives us enough time
Oh, no,
with the
there's-
January 3rd court date.
Thank you for the suggestion.
Well,
I'll have my venue decision before then. That's what you're looking
Okay.
for.
okay,
No, I'm not waiting till the 16th.
okay. And, we'll work on jury questionnaires and stuff too. I mean, all those things that we indicated, so.
And, he did change venue after this decision he issued, and he had hinted that he was going to do that. We still don't know which county it's going to. But yeah, they have to put these summons out. They can't just like summon jurors for a trial that goes weeks and weeks in December for January. They need to send them out way before that. But he's, they're not going to delay this again. They got to get this thing going. This trial was supposed to happen already. And you heard Mark Collins talk about, he was another judge kind of said, put this stuff on hold. You don't need to do the mitigation because of cost. To my knowledge, the state money that from the state bill, it's gone for these trials, for this case. It's gone. Like, they blew through all that money.
Okay. Thank you.
No, that's very tactful. Maybe unexpectedly tactful.
Maybe I don't want. That's right.
I'm sure that came from Mr. O'Brien.
I don't want to rush the court's decision.
Who, for the benefit of the record, has sat here for 40 minutes and not said a word, which is maybe a first time in ever.
That is a world record, Your Honor, and so the record's clear. Mr. O'Brien was not just a good prosecutor, he was a good defense attorney too, as he co-counseled the case when we had discussed this. So, and there is no conflict.
So Ron O'Brien is the new special prosecutor on this case. He was the Franklin County prosecutor for many, many years, like a couple decades at least. And he was voted out of office, I believe, in 2020. He was a Republican and he lost to the Democrat. So he's now part of the prosecution team. Andy Wilson is no longer on the prosecution team.
But he's an outstanding prosecutor and defense attorney.
Funny that his bio didn't reflect any defense work.
That's fairly recent, Your Honor.
Okay, I would like to make some record of negotiations with regard to pleas. I'm not suggesting anybody should plea Mr. Wagner, but there's a legal duty that if there's offers made by
Ryan Scheiterer is the lead detective on the case, the lead case agent, BCI agent. I'm talking about a special prosecutor. Now they're going to talk about plea negotiations, potential plea deals. I've been kind of told through the grapevine, Billy's not pleading to anything, not open to it. No way, no how.
by the state, that they be communicated to you. So I always, you'll hear me do this again.
I'm going to speed this up to like 1.25 speed.
Ask the lawyers if they've had negotiations. If there were negotiations, have they been communicated to you? Because hindsight is 20/20, and everybody wants the deal after it left. Once the horse leaves the barn, they want to ride it. It's too late. So I'm going to ask the state if they've made any plea offers. Just go yes or no.
Maybe
If you can. You want to own this?
it may be more.
Go with it.
Clear. Your Honor, it's been given to us that the government is always willing to listen to a potential plea, but we would have to bring that plea to them. The government has engaged us in different concepts of different possibilities, but it had to be firm from us to them before they would ever go to the victim's family to determine that. We've advised that of our client and putting a little bit more legwork into that lately, but that's what it is. So there is no specific offer, but they are open to suggestions, but the suggestions, so to speak, have to be firm, or at least to get them to go to the victim's family. I think that's kind of captured the negotiations back and forth so far.
Is that fair?
I think that's fair, yes.
We've talked about flat time, we've talked about other things, we've talked about different concepts, comparing and contrasting. And then each time we give those concepts to a client, sometimes it's very frustrating with us. So, but we believe that that's our ethical duty to continue to do that, regardless of.
100%. That's why I'm going to make sure that your ethical duty is covered on the record, so you don't have to try to fish through otherwise confidential.
It's super sad, the Roden family, they're sitting there. They don't want to be there. They wish their loved ones were here, and they've had to sit through all this for years. And, I'm not sure any plea deal they'd be happy with any of it. But even if let's say Billy gets a 30-year deal, just like Angela Wagner did, I'm not sure he'd make it to walk out of jail or out of prison. I don't think his health is very good from what I've heard.
Files and decide whether you can disclose, because the answer is yes, but you got to be in a forum you don't want to be in. So we're not going to go there.
Understood.
That's for your benefit and your clients. Explain to me, if you could, in this evolving area of law, what you think your duty is to the victims. Now, this is for you folks back there, because I said the last go around that the state's attorneys don't represent you. That's not a new concept. You should have heard that like 100 times already. But I don't know what it means to the state. You get the benefit of hearing what I get to hear. So go, if you would.
Your Honor,
I feel like he could soften his tone a little bit with the family. He was a judge for a really long time. I'm just a news person, but I feel like he could, they've lost 8 of their family members. Like, maybe dial it down a little bit, Judge.
I'm sure the court is familiar with the law surrounding victims' rights, and as a prosecutor, I am required to make sure they know of hearings. I am required to consult with them anytime I'm going to resolve a case. I am not bound by their wishes, but as far as legal duties to them, those are my legal responsibilities to the victim's family, is to make sure they know what's going on with the case. And
The reason I ask is Mr. Collins started by saying he needed to give you a firm offer that you could take to the victims.
yes,
Then it gets really murky, depending on the prosecutor and the venue, whether the victims have some sort of implied understanding that they get to make the call.
Okay.
it's different, say.
So I'm going to fast forward this a
It's
little bit.
hers. Now I'm going to build on that a step further, because what the prosecutor might say to me, or what the defense lawyers might say to the judge.
Okay, I'm going to get to the next part of this. So this was all about whether or not there had been a plea agreement offered.
It's the final hours of Gap Cyber Monday sale for free kid-safe phones and watches, easy parental controls, and reliable GPS tracking on the best phones built for kids and teens.
So basically, this judge is like, I want this over with. And he wants to know if there have been plea negotiations. It doesn't sound like there have been any
I don't do this because I think
there haven't been any meaningful plea negotiations at all. I've always heard for years that Billy has no interest in making a plea. If you remember from George's trial, the testimony was Billy was always like, shut your mouths, don't say a word, don't say anything. Well, Billy said a whole hell of a lot on his police interview, and none of it helped him. But I don't know if it's enough to get a conviction against him based solely just on that. But then things get really heated. It's going to get ugly here in a little bit when the judge makes a decision. I'm going to get to that here just in a second. What do you guys think of the judge? Put some comments in there while I scroll.
they have the luxury.
Trial.
It's how we get there. So Ms. Canepa did a nice job. She set the stage for me to tell you she's going to work really hard. She'll try to represent. can be to consider everything that's said by anybody that's relevant and then follow the law, not do what my personal belief might be.
But anyway, how does everybody feel about the judge? Hash Brown does not care for him. What do other people think of the judge? This judge is Melmac. The judge is Jonathan Hine. He worked in Dark County for like 20 years, 24 years, I think, something like that. I was reading about him. And then he won re-election, but then stepped down. It was kind of weird. Didn't really give a reason. Nobody really knows. Adair says he's okay. He's got pressure. So I think he's just not what they're used to. I think Judge Deering was like more laid back and stuff. And this guy's like, no, let's do this. I was brought in to get this case going. Billy's been in custody for 6 years and we're going to get this over with. So let me get to the fiery part.
Or my own fancy, but to follow the law. That's how we get there. Imperfect as it is, it's how we get there. So Ms. Canepa did a nice job. She set the stage for me to tell you she's going to work really hard. She'll try to represent your interest. And when
based on what I know so far about the trial aspect, I don't have anything additional.
So here are the orders coming out of today's hearing.
Okay, this is where it's going to get things, it's going to get hot. So it's going to get hot.
On representation by the state of Ohio, the death penalty specification is dismissed. The case proceeds without that specification. All of the defendants' pending motions are dismissed because most of them were focused upon the death penalty, and then also the lack of anybody prosecuting the motions. I tried to make a record a long time ago, tell me what you need to do. So for benefit of the record, it's not the judge didn't get his work done, as he wasn't given the work to do. So all your pending pretrial motions are gone. The death penalty specification is gone. The death penalty specification is gone. I'm not on the tip of the spear. I understand, Ms. Canepa, your dilemma. Only to compound the dilemma, will I now tell you that I'm going to proceed to sentencing in advance of trial on the other cases. So I'm proceeding to sentencing. I'm going to ask the court staff to have Angela Wagner, the other Wagner case, set for sentencing. I'm done waiting.
Okay, well, obviously, you know that I will be objecting to every single thing that you just said, so.
Totally should. I didn't expect to make anybody happy.
You can't dismiss a motion. We have not dismissed the specifications. We have not made a motion to dismiss the specifications.
And if you think I have to have motions, nothing would ever get done. I'm not trying to run this case until I think it's necessary for the court to run the case, not hear continued representations that we're going to get this thing negotiated when I'm now at 4 months waiting for something that was inevitable that has never happened. So in my impatience, I'm going to lead. And that's how I'm going to lead. And the nice thing is I told you this 3 weeks sooner than I maybe had to. So I don't expect you to agree. You can have all the objection you want.
To disagree is what you expect. Because if you sentence the defendants, what happens legally to the state's ability to enforce their plea agreements?
Tell me why this, I know the answer, so do you. And it's found in State versus Gilbert.
Okay, none of us know what State versus Gilbert is. It's a case. Apparently, it's case law that talks about whatever is going on here. But this judge has had it. He's basically said, you've had 3 or 4 months to do this. You haven't done it. And he doesn't feel, even with giving them a little bit more time, that any agreement is going to get done. So it's kind of like when your parents kind of like give you time to do something and you don't do it, they make the decision for you. And he did make the decision, and she's hot and she's really mad. And she's mad because she feels that if Jake, it's all about pressure and leverage, and her leverage over Jake and Angela, because they've got these plea deals. You know, Angela, a lot of people think that was a sweetheart plea deal. I personally don't think Angela Wagner is going to make it 30 years. I mean, and if she does, she'll be very, very old and frail by the time she gets out of prison. I just don't think, she's afraid they're just going to not show up and testify. My personal feeling is that she's just got to get on the horn to their lawyers, who she has been working with on this for years, and say, this judge is going to sentence your clients. You got to make sure they show up and testify at this trial like they're supposed to, because this is what they agreed to. And this is why Jake is not getting the death penalty. And this is why Angela is not getting the death penalty and getting 30 years. So let's continue to watch this, because Angie Canepa is mad.
Okay.
We all know
And
this.
so you're going to knowingly do that on a case where those two admitted to plotting for 4 months to kill 8 individuals, most of them while they slept.
I know the facts of the case. Thank you for the transcript. The problem is twofold.
Well, we're not going to trial on January 3rd then, obviously.
No, you have this.
You can't dismiss suspects without a motion by the state, when there is more than sufficient evidence to support a death penalty.
Looking for
Okay. I don't know if Angie Canepa is right about that the state has to present a motion to dismiss the death specs, but judges can dismiss all kinds of things on their own motions. They can make these decisions, and they do. So this is already something that was up for discussion. So I don't really know legally if she's right or not, but the judge said, guess what? I'm doing it.
Because we have got the testimony, sworn testimony of his 2 co-defendants, that he participated and personally killed 3 people. So the court has no basis to do this, no legal basis to do it.
Now, when I start talking, can we assume that you won't? I get that you're upset. You don't get that the court's been hearing.
Okay. Yikes. So the judge does not like being interrupted, and most judges probably wouldn't. So we'll continue.
Representations for months about the quality of your case and the cooperation of the state's witnesses that I'm getting ready to sentence, and their truthfulness, and that they're all locked in the bag, ready to go, solid case. The fact that you'll have this plea agreement worked out was supposed to have been done shortly after September, shortly after October. Every time we've met, I've asked and heard you represent, we're getting there, we're getting there. It was like somebody played a record today. We're getting there. Well, I'm on the tip of the spear for everything that you're not doing. So I'm telling you, we're not going forward with trial on a death penalty specification when the defense isn't ready because the state's not ready. I'm not assigning fault. I'm saying the clock ran out. The clock ran out. You know how this could play. I know how this could play. The next move is yours. I get that. I get that. I'm just telling you that we're not going to pussyfoot around any longer with assurances of things that may never happen. Oh, by the way, if you don't get your agreement worked out, we're not going to trial anyway, because there's 1,000 motions that got to be decided, because everybody has said we don't need all those motions decided. So I struck their motions because of your representations that we're going to get there. I get it. I'm not saying anybody did anything wrong. I'm saying the clock ran out.
Yeah.
So, do whatever you got to do. Like, I'm not going to.
Okay. So the judge has had it. And, I think he does make a fair point. If these plea agreements are so rock solid, then if they're on board and they're going to cooperate, then they should be willing to come in. Hash Brown was asking why sentence them before trial. My theory, and I could be totally wrong on this, maybe, this case has cost millions and millions and millions of dollars. Pike County is one of the poorest counties in the state of Ohio. Every day that they're locked up in other jails, Pike County is paying for this. If they ship them off to the Department of Corrections and get them sentenced, because their cases are just sitting there languishing in Pike County, every day that they're in other jails, Pike County is paying other jails, other counties to house them. You ship them off to the Department of Corrections, they go on the state's tab. That's my theory. I could be wrong. Or maybe he's just like, I got to get these things off the docket. Like, I got to clear this. I got to clear this up. I would like to know how he was assigned to this case. I'm assuming the Supreme Court of Ohio just reaches out to whomever. to whatever judge they feel is qualified. Are you available? Can you take this case? Okay, fine. We'll assign you this case. And maybe they wanted somebody, maybe they were like, okay, enough already. And we're going to bring somebody in who's going to be fair, but also is going to drop the hammer when he feels necessary. I don't know. So, and it's just sad because if things do go sideways, as Angie Canepa said, the Roden family, they may suffer. You notice Mark Collins and his co-counsel are sitting there and they're saying nothing because this is potentially a win for them. This is one less thing they have to worry about going into trial. So let's continue because Angie Canepa is mad.
I'd like to journalize this tomorrow. The staff will go scheduling with all these guaranteed good cooperative witnesses you have lined up. And I understand what Gilbert says.
Why are you trying to sabotage this case?
I'm not.
No, yes, you absolutely are.
Okay, take the record.
Okay, so she literally just accused the judge of trying to sabotage her case. And then Ron O'Brien, if I think I heard that right, said, why don't you let me talk? Because he's like, oh my God, you are talking to a judge like this. I can't believe it. So let's rewind that just a few seconds or so. Because I was waiting to hear that. I had trouble hearing when I
journalize this tomorrow. The staff will go scheduling with all these guaranteed good cooperative witnesses you have lined up. And I understand what Gilbert says.
Why are you trying to sabotage this case?
I'm not.
No, yes, you absolutely are.
Okay, take the record.
If I may, address that.
Ron O'Brien's like, let me talk.
Your Honor, I understand the court's frustration, but the state cannot unilaterally force the defendant to enter into an agreement when there's ongoing discussions. I think the court properly can and should set a deadline if the court wants to set a deadline, but I have never seen a death penalty expected dismissed absent the state making the request, the defense making the request. I understood at least what the court said. You have unilaterally decided because the clock ran out, you're going to dismiss death penalty specs, and I just don't think the court has that authority or has a sufficient record should an interlocutory appeal be taken to support it. And so I think I would ask that the court give the parties until, this is what day, I lose track of days, till Monday to present to the court a written agreement before the court would issue the kind of order that you just described.
You could have till Monday. And thank you for the courtesy of giving me yet another assurance. I'm working with you as much as it sounded like I wasn't. I worked with the lawyers to this point, short as it is. I get it. Everybody's been here since 2018, right?
Not everybody.
I'm the last guy on the bench, right? Criminal Rule 48B.
Okay, so Ron O'Brien's like, oh my God. He's like, oh my God. Let me try to turn the temperature down on this whole mess. So he's trying to fix this to the best of his ability. And he's right. They can't force Billy into an agreement. However, they're trying to get him to waive double jeopardy on the death penalty specifications in case this whole thing goes sideways. And then they would, I guess, start stuff over. I don't even know what they would do. But this is what happens when it's like when you make deals with people like Jake Wagner, you gotta, things can go sideways, and you made a deal with the devil. So you felt like you had to. Their case against Billy, I'm not sure what they have against Billy. They've got that one statement, but he kept his mouth shut for the most part on the wiretaps, except for he gave that interview to, I think it was John Jenkins and the guy that got fired from BCI, the one guy. Can't remember his name now. It's on the tip of my tongue. Can you guys help me out? The one that was out in Athens County. Shoot, what is that guy's name? I can't remember. I wrote a story about him when he got booted from BCI. He was like kind of the head of the unit out there in Southeast Ohio at the beginning of this whole thing. Mike Trout. That was his name, Trout. So Trout and John Jenkins, I believe, interviewed Billy in the Kroger parking lot or whatever. And Billy said, he said a lot of really dumb things. So, and things that ended up not being true, and talking about like trying to call Chris Sr. that morning, and he didn't. all this stuff. So anyway, Angie Canepa is mad. But when you make deals with people like that, and a lot of your case rests on that, this is you might get burned, and this is what happens. So the judge is basically saying, well, you've been saying you got all these people ready to go, so this should not be a big deal. This should not be a problem. So yikes. It's hot, and the temperature is hot
Gives
in
the
this
court authority to announce in open
courtroom.
court on the record the reasons for its dismissal of a case. It's an extraordinary remedy if you want to call a death penalty specification dismissal, but it's not outside the rules. I have to explain why. If I let this go longer and we don't get to the agreement, clearly anything that happens at trial is going to be reversed for all of the work that didn't get done because everybody said it wasn't. So the reason's going to be the lack of adequate time to do what needs to get done for a death penalty case to go forward. Everybody knows in the room, everybody's ineffective if this case goes to trial in January as a death penalty case. Mr. O'Brien, welcome to the party. Monday's great. Call me Monday afternoon saying we're really, really close. But at some point in time, since I've heard that for 4 months, I probably won't care. So like I'm telling you, we're out of time. I'm not taking sides except to say the system has to work. I'm not adverse to the state. I'm building this upon what I've heard for 4 months, that this isn't going to be a death penalty case. And now I have like people slamming their hands on the table, figuratively, saying that what an outrageous thing the court just did. I didn't do it. I only responded to the facts that were represented to me. Even again today, the lawyers are doing a fine job. They're working on where they want to be going. I'm telling you, we're going to go where they say we're going to go. Nobody's walking this back, including.
Okay, the docket asks why was he O'Brien? Okay, that's what I thought you meant. The docket is asking why was he added at this late date, O'Brien? Well, I'm assuming because Angie Canepa would then have to try this case all by herself. She didn't have co-counsel on this case until whenever Ron O'Brien filed a notice of appearance. So, yeah, she needs co-counsel. She can't do this case by herself. I mean, I guess she could, but like, my God, like, really? Like, you're not going to do this case by yourself. Nobody's going to do this case by themselves. Like, it's a lot. It's a lot to present. So, the last time she had Rob Junk and Andy Wilson with her, that was 3, right? That was 3 attorneys, three prosecutors on this case. So she can't do this case by herself. I mean, I guess she could, but she'd be like running herself into the ground every day. This is the kind of case where you need 2 or 3 lawyers. The defense has 3 lawyers representing Billy. So it's a lot. It's a lot to go through. So I think that's why. But yeah, how is he supposed to get caught up in 6 weeks though? Good question. Good question. Because you would think that he maybe like would have been brought in sooner. Because Andy Wilson's been off this case for over a year. He had to go back to the Department of Public Safety and like he runs that agency for the state of Ohio for Governor DeWine. So, so crazy. This is I mean, I hate to say it, it's a hot mess. I don't know how many times covering this case, especially when I worked in local news, like we'd go out there, like we'd do however I'd meet like my photographer, Ed, who I miss so much. And we'd always meet in Claremont County right off 32. And I'd hop in his car and we'd make the trek out there. Do you know how many times we went out there and nothing would happen? And it was like, there are so many times that happened in this case. I mean, this thing has really dragged on for a long time, and there's a lot of discovery and stuff to go through. But wow, I mean, I feel bad for Ron O'Brien. I don't know how he's supposed to get caught up in 6 weeks, because maybe you do need 3 lawyers for the prosecution. I don't know, but the judge has had it because he's like, I mean, I think he's kind of right. In a way, and maybe he's not like saying it in the best way, but I think maybe he pushed the sentencing back till after trial maybe that's a good compromise, and that ensures maybe there's still that leverage and pressure over Jake and Angela. It's still like pressure over them to have to fulfill their end of the bargain. Or you just talk to their lawyers and be like, this is what they agreed to. Your clients better be there and better be telling the story. This is, or I'm going to withdraw I'm going to seek to have their stuff vacated. I don't even know if that's possible. So, again, guys, subscribe if you want, because I'd like to do more of these. Subscribe to my channel. That'd be really cool. I'd like to do more of these on other cases. But I'm going to see, I can't remember if we still have some, or if this is pretty much it. This is probably it. But yeah, for this case, we still don't know the venue, and it's so many weeks out, and we still don't know, we don't know where it's happening. I don't know. Maybe the judge is like, this is the judge's way of saying, plead this thing out, get rid of this case, like dispose of this. I don't know if that's what he's saying. But I'm going to pull up this thing really quickly. The state filed it after prosecution filing. I got a lot of documents on here. After my, this is certainly not the Judge Deering show, but I feel like sometimes Judge Deering was a little too, I don't know. He was very patient. I don't know. But he got kind of mad during the George Wagner IV trial. So Angie Canepa had filed this thing, a memorandum of the state of Ohio opposing dismissal of capital specifications. And she included some stuff where Billy was on the phone with his mom, Frederica, that's a whole nother discussion. She's an interesting woman. November 17th of 2024. I wonder if there's a way for me to, I'm going to see if I can put this in the thing really quickly. Yeah, I think I can get this in here. I'll put this in here real quick, guys. That's not a Google slide. So I'm kind of just learning how to do this. Oh, wait, here. Actually, I'm just going to read it to you because it's going to take me too long to figure this out. Let's see. Prosecution filing. It's basically indicating Billy's saying he's not signing anything. Anyway, this SHIT, he said, I'm going to be wore out by the time I get to court on Wednesday. And, but talking about being in medical lockdown due to his sugar levels being too high, he has diabetes. Frederica says, well, I love you, Billy. And Billy says, yeah, well, Mom, I don't know, but they're trying some really effed up SHIT on me. And I really don't want to. They're trying to get me to sign some SHIT and I ain't signing it. Frederica says, about your medicine? Billy says, no, at court, they're wanting me to sign and I ain't signing it. Frederica says, well, I'm going to stay out of it, Billy. I can't give you any advice. Billy says, yes, I know. I just wanted to let you know. And Frederica says, okay. And then 3 days later on the 20th, Frederica says, did you go to court today? Billy says, yep. Yeah, I went. And that's my Billy impersonation. I'll do it in my Billy voice. And Frederica says, did that attorney show up? Billy says, yeah, amazing. He showed up amazingly. Frederica says, which one, Collins? Billy said, both of them. And Frederica says, oh, well, what did he say to you? He said something, didn't he? I guess you can't. Billy says, not much, Mom. They keep trying to make me do some stupid BS and I'm not going to do it. And Frederica says, okay, well, I don't want to talk to you about that. No. And basically Angie Canepa is including that because she's just saying, look, you're dismissing this when he's refusing to sign anything. But maybe Billy's kind of like not so dumb when it comes to stuff. I don't know. I won't say smart. So yeah, so it's kind of crazy. So guys, that's where things stand. So the judge officially dismissed the death specs the other day. Angie Canepa's, I'm sure, fuming. She's trying to figure out how to work this out, but I think she's just got to call Greg Myers and the other attorneys on the case. I don't know why their names are escaping me right now, but they're very good lawyers. Mark is one of them, and then Bob. you know, I cover so many cases. I have too many names floating around in my head, but they're all really good. They're really, really good lawyers, very, very good lawyers. And I have their names all over the place. I used to have everybody's name like etched into my brain. But she just got to call them and be like, you have got to make your guys show up. Like, that's it. So anyway, guys, let's see if there's anything left from that we missed with this.
The possibility, Ms. Canepa, you're just being suckered.
Oh yeah,
by
let's.
the
Oh, I
defense
forgot
lawyers
this
who are
part.
trying
Hold
to
on.
play this for a second trial. With all due respect.
Hold on. Let's look at this.
I'm with her hands on the table, figuratively, saying that what an outrageous thing the court just did. I didn't do it. I only responded to the facts that were represented to me. Even again today, the lawyers are doing a fine job. They're working on where they want to be going. I'm telling you, we're going to go where they say we're going to go. Nobody's walking this back, including the possibility, Ms. Canepa, you're just being suckered by the defense lawyers who are trying to play this for a second trial. With all due respect, I'm not worried about these lawyers. I'm worried about their appellate counsel, who I don't even know, who often throw everybody in the room under the bus. So if you can work out a deal that makes me look like I didn't just overreach, you're welcome to. But Rule 48B is the duty of the court, the authority of the court to dismiss charges.
Based on merit.
I just gave it to you.
That's not merit.
No. You don't like the merits. So let's just agree to disagree. Let's just agree to disagree.
Prior to today, did the court give the state or the defendant a deadline on this agreement? Prior to today, did the court say, if you don't have a defendant's agreement, which is, again, an unorthodox thing, you're going to dismiss the death specifications unilaterally? Prior to today, was there any thought of sentencing the defendant? What is the court's reason for moving forward with sentencing on the defendant?
I don't owe anybody anything except to finish cases at my own discretion. I understand you don't want it that way. I understand that you would like to have witnesses.
Agreements were constructed before different courts who indicated they would abide by that. But now again, because you're the new judge in town, you come in here and you undo our prior agreements with different counsel that already
I
been in
didn't do anything. I
telling
only
me
told you.
you know the ramifications of sentencing the co-defendants in this case.
Of course I do. Then why aren't you ahead of me?
You prevent them from being witnesses for the state because they can say, I'm not testifying.
You're the one that said you had them all packaged up and ready to go. Now, I don't
Under
think.
the agreements, Your Honor, that you are seeking to undermine. And you think this is funny?
No.
There were 8 people murdered in the middle of the night.
How about we agree that you've been telling me for months to look for something that may not ever happen? I'm telling you, we're not going to go forward with the trial when everybody in the room is going to be ineffective based upon your representations and the defense's reputations. Not like the state did anything wrong.
But the state
We are
is being
not
punished for it.
You have this habit that's annoying. It's conversational talk. I get it. I understand completely how this puts you in an awkward spot.
Awkward?
So let's just agree to disagree. I'm telling you, we're going to get decisive and we're going to get done.
I think the court is demonstrating complete bias in this case.
Of course you would say that and I don't have any bias. No, I have a duty to get this case done.
Well, if I understand correctly, the court has given us till Monday to present this agreement that is yet to be produced, in which instance.
So Ron O'Brien was like, oh my God, I have to stand up. She's like, we have to do a trial with this judge. We've really not dealt with him. And she's accusing the judge of being biased. I have to stand up and stop this like right now. He's like, oh my God, I have got to stop this because this is not the way you do this. He's like, this is not what you do. And Billy's side of the room, they're just like, okay, like we're just going to sit here. We're not saying anything.
The court separating out the Gilbert issue, the court still be sentencing if that agreement is presented, the co-defendants.
I don't think the public understands that we're actually supposed to put in a certain order in how things get done. But the public does perceive delay. The public does see the courts as an institution of glacial movement. Now, I'm not saying that's wrong. There's a lot of intense work that has to get done to get cases to the trial and to the finish stage. I suspect everybody that's a victim wants to have a chance to tell me the hurt, the pain, the ramifications. And for years and years and years, they've had to wait. I suspect it'd be cathartic, healthy for them to be able to finally speak, but they have to wait too. So the day for waiting is done. I can revisit on any occasion, any part of the case that's necessary. I haven't made my mind up on what anything should happen is. I told the victims I'm not bound by what the lawyers agree. Never have been, no court is, unless the plea agreement encompasses a contractual understanding, which I don't think happened. So I'm not going to go making decisions today on what I'm going to do with regard to sentencing, but I am going to schedule sentencings in advance of this trial. And then if everybody works out something, I can rethink, as I'm supposed to, in real time, what's appropriate under the facts. Under the circumstances and facts today, there can't be any more time for promises. It's put up or shut up time. I'm not biased here. This cuts both ways. It puts everybody in an awkward spot. But it's not about being happy. It's about being efficient and thorough and seeking finality, which somebody lost years ago because there's a lot of intense work to do. I get it. There's a process to go through. But this can't keep going the way it's not going. So I appreciate it. Work on it. Nail it down if you can. I'm not interested in anybody getting sued for being ineffective or having ethics issues.
Okay, so there you have it. So as it stands now, we're going to a new county, no death penalty. Jake and Angela getting sentenced in December, barring, he said he'll rethink things if he's presented with something. So we'll see what happens. So guys, I really appreciate you coming on and hanging out with me for a little bit. I'm going to hop off. If you have any questions, I'm waiting to see if you guys ask any questions. I really do appreciate you coming on. I'd like to talk to you about more cases. This case in particular, the facts of this case are so insane. And what happened in this case was so, all these homicide cases are horrible and should never happen, that this one is just beyond the pale. And I have a lot of cases I could talk to you about. So I'd like to do that more if you'd like to jump on and do that with me. But this is just, it's just really awful and sad. So we'll see how this pans out. But again, feel free to subscribe and I'll try to do more of these and I'll give you more notice next time too. So I'm going to log off and, I would love to have Joseph Scott Morgan on. That'd be great. I love him. He and I would probably talk for hours about this case, hours on end, and talk about all kinds of stuff. So thank you guys so much. I'll talk to you another time. Have a good night.